Hi everyone, this is Susanna Pagosian and welcome to the Basement Tapes. I really am a curious cat, so this is where we're gonna explore new ideas, talk about any issues, talk about life really, and where your faith takes you, whether you have faith or you don't have faith. I hope you come here with an open mind and you enjoy this episode. Welcome back everyone, welcome back to the Basement Tapes podcast. Today, my guest is Flora. Flora here is a dear friend of mine of over 10 years. She has amazing experience in production and marketing and technology. Overall, just a very talented girl. She dabbled a little bit in comedy. And even though I've been telling her, please let me manage you the last 10 years, we'll see when she decides to actually become a comedic star. Maybe one day. But welcome, Flora. How are you?
I'm great. I'm feeling so humbled. I feel like you managing me would be the blind leading the blind. Like, we'd have too much fun. We wouldn't get any work done.
Why wouldn't you want that?
Well, yeah. I guess there's nothing stopping it, but...
How fun would our adventures be?
We have had a lot of fun adventures.
And then one day Netflix could call us and say, oh my God, we finally have our special.
Yes, I know.
No, but you really are very, very talented.
Thank you.
Remember that David
People are going to be like,
Spade?
what did this girl even do?
I'm going to put your David Spade
Please don't. Please
in the show notes. Okay. Well, let's just get into it. Flora and I have... there's been so many life events we've gone through together.
Core memories.
Just like even some of the family dynamics that we've both experienced separately has been oddly so parallel and similar where I always thought like, I'm probably the only one experiencing this. And then once we start sharing, we realize like, oh boy, we're like really kind of going through the same thing, which makes it so cozy.
Yeah. And there's dozens of us. I know.
Out there.
I know there are, because sometimes like I'll go and my friends have like this name for it where it's like a radar where I just intuitively I'll talk to somebody at a party and it's like we're just so connected through like shared trauma. It's so funny. And I don't know why I find these people. We find each other.
Love a good trauma bond.
Well, that's not what it is. But which is messed up. You would think that the term trauma bond would mean two people bonding over trauma, but it doesn't.
What does it mean?
It means like one person is so traumatized by another person that they're bonded to that person because of their trauma. Like, it's not two people relating and bonding over trauma. It's like you're bonded to something because it's so familiar to you in a probably bad way. And I didn't know that for a long time. And somebody explained it to me and I was like, oh, I wish it would be a different description.
Yeah. So it's so interesting. You mentioned trauma and my mind immediately, every time I hear that word, goes to the history of the Armenians and the amount of trauma they experienced due to the genocide in 1915 and even recently with the Artsakh, devastation in 2020 and just going through that so-called war, which I don't like calling it a war because it wasn't.
Me either.
It wasn't one. It was just another attempt to annihilate and, get rid of a group of people. And it's interesting how much trauma affects your DNA. Now, I'm not a scientist.
Yeah.
But I do watch enough YouTube and Instagram reels.
And there's so much content now where, like, when we were growing up, social media was not, first of all, not existent for most of our adolescence. And then it just wasn't like, there just wasn't all this content that like therapists are putting out, or like specifically like all these, Armenian infographics, or like not just Armenians, obviously any kind of like indigenous people or people who have been oppressed, like have these informative social media posts and studies. Yeah. But it's like more, like digestible. It's in a form where you can slide through a few, photos in a carousel, and you kind of learn something instead of having to read so much about it. So more people are aware of these things now, which is cool. But
it's so cool. But it's so interesting. One of our media team members over here who just left 2 minutes ago was wearing a shirt, and his shirt said "Stronger than 1915."
Yeah.
So in connection to trauma, right? Because majority of Armenians have a bloodline of ancestors and grandparents that experienced the genocide and caused trauma. Are you going to be a product of your trauma, or are you going to grow out of that trauma?
Yeah. And people kind of deny it too sometimes because it's generational trauma, and I feel like everyone's so over that word now, or over that phrase, because it's like been overused in some way. But no, it's a real thing. And yeah, I didn't actually know my grandparents' story of like, you know, the layers of, you know, what happened during the genocide and how they survived and stuff. I don't know how I think my grandma's family, my dad's mom, wasn't affected because my grandma's grandpa actually was one of the first Armenians to come to Fresno.
Love that.
He like, yeah, so they have a fun story where like he
left before it started.
He left like way before, and then when he heard the news, like once the news made it to America about what was happening, he was really involved with I guess the church groups that
AGBU, there was a lot
I don't
of
know.
groups.
Yeah, I don't know which group he was part of, but like it was through the church that he and a bunch of Armenian like farmers and ranchers were sent to Fresno, or like they had the opportunity to come here. And then he was like threatening the priest that he like knew and like worked with, you know, or like to come here. And he was like, you got to send me back immediately. Like you have to send me back to Armenia. Like my family's over there. You people are dying. Like I need to go and fight or something.
Wow.
And I don't exactly remember what happened. I think they were like, no, we're not going to take you back. But there were so many orphans, you know, after the fact and during, and he adopted, you know, one of the orphans, and he like tried to trace back, you know, whose family that they came from. And he stopped, he like, you know, got into a fight with some people over, you know, these girls that were going to marry into Georgian families or other families that wanted to adopt them. And he was like, absolutely not. We're going to lose the bloodline. Like, you know, like we'll find like Armenian husbands for these girls. And I'm jumbling a lot of the info because she doesn't really talk about it a lot, but my grandpa has a direct experience with the genocide. My dad's dad again. And he was living in the Harpert area, which is now, you know, it's like Harput in, you know, Turkish or whatever. So Western Armenia, they were living there and in peace with their Turkish neighbors. And so many people have stories like this where, you know, like everything was fine.
The Ottoman Empire, we've lived with them for like 500, 600 years.
Yeah, things were fine. It was very unexpected. And their Turkish neighbor heard about what was happening to the Armenians. And he basically risked his life to save, and I forget if it was my grandpa or my grandpa's dad as babies. I want to say, you know, it must have been my grandpa's parents, because that
it is.
Yeah. So they were like toddlers, and this Turkish neighbor smuggled them under, like he had this big, you know, wagon with horses, and he smuggled a bunch of kids, one of them being my grandpa's dad, my great grandfather, and literally like, you know, trekked it to Syria, dropped off the kids, and then when he came back, he was executed for, you know, being a quote infidel. And there's so many stories like that.
Wow.
And it's so, I mean, it's so crazy that of course anything like that happened, and we think, oh, like, well, obviously he did the right thing, and, you know, like that's what I would do. But it's, I mean, you have to think this man literally risked his life to save children that weren't his, that were just his neighbor's kids, and paid the ultimate price for it. So sometimes, like, especially during the Artsakh quote unquote war, I would get horrible messages from these Azeri trolls or bots, or I don't know if they were even real people, but whatever accounts that were linked to Azerbaijan that would literally harass me. Like, thank God Instagram has blurring technologies, so you don't see like the videos and the photos they attempted to like share with me. And like, you know, there's a quote that there's like a comment or a DM that I screenshot, and sometimes now I look back at it and I laugh because it's so detailed. Like it reads like a drag queen wrote it to me, where it's like, honey, you need to get a nose job and you're so ugly. I'm gonna put your bones up like art pieces in a gallery. And I was like, okay, queen, slay. Love the vision.
Okay, girl.
No, it was obviously like really bad. Like I posted and people were, especially non-Armenians, were appalled of like,
Well, yeah.
how could anybody say this person like, and you know, people are like, what can we do? Like we need to report. And I'm like, guys, like, unfortunately, this is very common and this is what's going on. And this is the mentality that some people have due to brainwashing and like just horrible government propaganda. But the point of this is like, sometimes I think back to that Turkish neighbor, and I think to like a couple other, you know, Turkish people that I've not really even encountered, but like just here and there through, you know, projects we've worked on together where I barely know this person and they're going out of their way to help me. And I don't want to really get into the specific example, but they just literally went out of their way, and we haven't even interacted that closely or anything. But she was like putting up posters like around town for me of like all kinds of stuff. So yeah, so I try to remember, which is so hard, but try to remember that people are not their governments. And
yeah,
trauma just messes with your brain, and it gets like me to a point where I'm like so angry and so prejudiced against who I think my oppressor is or my enemy. And it's natural to have a little bit of that like fear and, you know, tact. But yeah, you gotta remember, like, we're all just people. Yeah, I kind of just want to talk about like how trauma affected like families more so.
Yeah, families and their I wish I knew more about the DNA like effect, because it does affect DNA.
Yeah.
Like your
it does.
DNA
there's
strand.
a bunch of studies that came out about it, and yeah, it's kind of like I think of us as like lab rats. like even with lab rats, I think if like you're a rat and your mom was a lab rat. Let me get somewhere. If your mom's a lab rat and like she went through a certain experiment, right, or a certain maze or whatever, and you've never been in a maze before, but like the second you're put in a maze, you know what to do, because like your mom or your parents' genetics affect you, even if you haven't directly experienced it. Like you have this memory. That's the best way I can explain and sum up this study that I skimmed through. I'm sure I didn't even read it, but that's kind of what I remember, is they likened it to something like lab rats or other animals that like instinctively get things. Like my dog Chami, who I adore, she is very spoiled and she's a diva, but instinctively, she's never hunted anything in her life, but she knows how to. No one taught her, you know? Like I've had this dog.
It's in her blood.
It's in her blood. It's just in her memory of like her body.
Her DNA.
Her DNA, yes.
I think what's really incredible now with our generation is that, you know, my parents never explained to me about genocide. I learned, they never had a conversation with me about it. So the first time I heard about it, I'm like, what's that?
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, I think just my grandma explained things to me, but she was like overcompensating for like, wow, this is my first like grandchild born in America. I need to go into overdrive of teaching her things. And also Armenian school taught me. I don't think my parents really cared to explain this to me.
My grandpa, all he said was that his family owned a village in, you know, Western Armenia, and then the kids had to run away. One of anyways, there's just so many stories, but there's even parts of like my family that have stories that have been affected that I have no clue. They have not talked about it. And I look at my grandparents, I look at my grandma, who's still alive, God bless her soul, and she doesn't talk much. She's more of a doer. She'll like physically move around and do and cook and whatever, and like be like light spirited and whatnot, but
they don't like to talk about
they
it,
don't.
which makes sense. And
do you think that protects like our like protects us from experiencing trauma, or like what is the psychology?
I don't know. I think like people just of that age, they don't like to talk about their feelings in general, and they try to do everything to suppress it, which is why my grandma is so booked. You know, her schedule is like
booked and busy.
I'm like, you literally don't have a job. Like, I don't understand why she's so busy all the time. She keeps herself so busy. And she wrote this like diary for me, like chronicling parts of my childhood, which is very sweet.
Beautiful.
It's my prized possession.
I wish I had something like that.
It's literally like, yeah. And I thought of my grandma in such a different way, and people who also grew up with her, because she was a teacher and a very, very strict dasrek, which I can only liken to like a counselor of some sort. She like was so strict that her students, who are now full-on adults, like 50, 60-year-olds, who come to America, or like somehow like they get in contact with her, the first thing they say is, you know, like she really like dastirackled everybody. She disciplined so hard and was just so mean, but in a way where like she like loved her students. So that was my and that's most like people's
one
context.
Of the best forms of love is discipline.
Okay, yeah, you say that, but you know, you also
I'm like
weren't
the least
like,
disciplined person on the planet.
Yeah, let's not get into that. But yeah, no, so you would be a great parent for sure. We'll get into that in a second, Suze, because you definitely have that authority in you. But I think that's also why growing up you probably like rejected authority and were like, girl, who are you to tell me anything? But my grandma was like extremely strict, and I didn't know you were allowed to challenge authority for a long time. Like, I think 2 years ago, I was like, wait, like this person who doesn't, you know, tell me what to do in normal settings doesn't have say over my life, you know? Like in any way, I was really bad with authority. But for her, like, I was a perfect child to mold into whatever you wanted, because I just, you know, was quiet and I listened to everything. But yeah, so my grandma had a different personality than she has now. She's still very bossy, but she's so much more tender. And I don't know if it's because of her age. I don't know if it's because she read the Bible so much. Like, she read it like 4 times now and really like sunk in, where she's like, I realized it wasn't my place to judge people so much. And you know, you had a good saying of it. What was it? Like,
oh yeah, it was earlier today we were talking and I said, oh my gosh, like it's like the power that your words have over your life is real. Because even sometimes I'll like jokingly, like I'll joke about a few things, like ridiculous things. I'm like, oh, that would never happen to me. And then come like a year or two later, I'm experiencing what I was joking about.
Yeah. And she experienced that too. She was like, I would judge so many things, you know, for example, like, and it's just because of like their education and the way things were expected societally back then. Mm-hmm. But like divorce, oh my God, can you name a bigger,
not the D word,
name a bigger shame to your entire family, right? So she would be like really scared. And it was also like the fear of her. I've heard of that too, of like, if like you're really, really afraid of something and you're so focused on it and
will
you're
come and get
obsessed with it, like it might happen to you. So relax, you know. Easier said than done. But you know, when her son got divorced, I mean, all hell broke loose. She just couldn't believe that something like that happened to her, which I've used to my advantage sometimes when she you know, well, this is more before she got more what's the word, open-minded, I guess. Yeah, before she would just say like something where she knew, you know, about like what kind of man she wanted me to end up with, for example, and I would manipulate her and say, well, I mean, not every Armenian guy's a great person, or I mean, they could be a great person, but it might not be a great match, right? I mean, you raised my dad, who's a great guy, but he divorced my mom, didn't he? and she's just stumped. She's like, oh man, she got me. And then, yeah, I feel bad. I had to stop doing that because she got too in her head about it. But yeah, it's just funny seeing how her trauma has affected her with, you know, growing up in scarcity and being so over prepared, which I'm thankful for, because I mean, we would always kind of make fun of her in a way of like, grandma, you know, you're a hoarder. You don't need to buy every single thing in bulk and, you know, cook enough meals to last you 4 winters. Like she has two freezers. In her like tiny apartment. I swear it's like 400 square feet. There's 2 freezers, and then there's like a community fridge that she uses too. And we would make fun of her for that. We're like, grandma, like, relax, you know, we don't have to prepare for like the apocalypse. And then COVID happened and the shelves were empty, and you know, she was like, aha, I told you guys. And we were like, wow, you know, yeah, you did. But
oh my gosh,
all of this stuff is like, you know, because of the way she grew up, and it's taken her a long time to feel semi-comfortable. I think once I turned like 20, it was like a drastic difference in her personality, and it's mellowed out little by little since, even though she has OCD still. But once I turned 20, I think she was like, okay, she's fine.
She's normal.
She's fine. You know, we made it.
20 years later, we made it.
It's like I raised the last grandchild, and she's completely given up on disciplining any other generations.
I mean, I think she's tired.
No, she's tired. Of course, she's 85 years old. Bless her. But sometimes, like, I get so jealous of my little cousins who are, you know, like 10 years old, 12 years old. And I just think, man, like, they're well behaved. Don't get me wrong. But I didn't have to just be well behaved. I had to be perfect.
Perfection.
I had to be a gerazantsik, okay? I had to be a little hostess when people came over. These kids, they're coming and they're sitting around slouching on the couch, playing on their iPad, and I'm like, you have no idea how good you have no idea how lucky you are that someone's not making you get down on your knees and comb the little hairs on the side of the rug.
Would you make you do that?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild.
It was kind of fun. It was like the closest to like playing that I because
like, I had no friends, but there was a rug I would comb every day.
No, seriously, I would pretend that like it was like doll hairs, you know, and I got to like comb the doll hairs, but it was like on our khali.
This is just getting sadder and sadder.
No,
Let's switch it up. Let's switch it up.
No, my grandma, we would have so much fun. We would take the bus to McDonald's. That was a very fun excursion for us because they had a play place, and we would go to the park all the time. And that's why I am the way I am.
And that's why I'm perfect. What do you think is one life lesson that you've learned from your grandmother? If you were to summarize it in one sentence.
Read the supermarket papers.
Flora, let's be serious.
No, I'm serious. You guys, nobody reads the deals.
No, but something no, but something that like other people would like admire, where you're like, that is wisdom that has been passed to you.
Everything's a double-edged sword, because my grandma is an exemplary person, and she is extremely, I think the best thing about her is that she's grateful for every little thing. Thing. And I'm extremely that way on most days, unless I'm like having a really bad day. But honestly, most days I'm really extremely grateful, you know, for just anything. Like, wow, the weather is so nice, and like I'm unemployed right now, but I'm like, it's fine. I get to be unemployed. I had money in unemployment like waiting for me, because I didn't get to use it, or didn't use it for, you know, years and years. And now you could
go to Greece and Armenia in peace.
Yeah, so, you know, good timing there. But my grandma has a lot of good lessons. Just everything is kind of a double-edged sword, where you have to be a great host to people, of course. But she'll go out of her way and do everything for other people and rarely consider herself. And she'll overwork herself, because I think she grew up thinking like, you know, if you're lazy and you're resting, that's bad.
Yeah.
So there's levels to it. There's moderation and everything, but I think she's a very, very good person. I'm very lucky to have, you know, spent a lot of time, maybe too much time, with her.
You see her once a week.
Yeah, but I like lived with her basically, you know. Right. Yeah, so I see her once a week, but I'm so used. I'm the person she trusts the most.
But what a blessing to have such a beautiful person in your life.
Yeah, she's a great person.
Such a blessing.
She's beloved, as she should be. Too. She's just, I wish she, and it's so hard because she grew up like, with so many problems, not just personal problems, but just everything, like the way economies were, moving to a new country.
Yeah, a lot of our families experienced that.
Yeah, so with her,
she handled it like a champ.
Yeah, she did, but she also never fully relaxed ever. I don't think she's ever been relaxed in her life.
I think that's a what did they say? It's a response to like stress or something.
Yeah.
There was like something that I was watching about that where a lot of grandparents, their generation, they can't physically rest, and that's because they're traumatized.
No, she's always just thinking about something going wrong,
and that's not healthy. Like you need to chill out.
No, but I mean that's like years of whatever. Like she had to worry. Like in her family, like you had to worry. You had to be prepared for things. So I don't blame her for that. I wish she got to just relax about things. Like with the LA fires and stuff. I didn't even get a chance to worry about anything because I was so worried about her, and I was like, Grandma, like nothing's gonna happen to you. She's like, what if something happens? And there's no way for me to get out of the building. I'm like, trust me, we'll get you out of the building.
Don't worry, we got you. Yeah. We got you, babe. It's so cool to see that although our grandparents and our parents have experienced such different realities due to the countries that they've come from, the governments, the upbringing. And then there's our generation that have had the incredible blessing to be raised in such an amazing country like the United States of America.
Oh my God, Sus, I can't.
I love it. I'm sorry. I'm a total patriot, but
just because I'm on this podcast doesn't mean I agree with everything she
that's
says.
Fine.
Just disclaimer.
That's fine. That's fine. But the way the environment that we were raised in.
Yeah.
And the education and the mentality, we're a great dual. There's a dual identity that we are experiencing.
Yeah. Well, we also got to grow up in LA around Armenians.
Oh yeah, I didn't know that.
No, I mean like
are you
that
from
adds
the
a
valley?
different level of being able to have both.
So like, do you think we would think differently if we like were raised in Texas?
Absolutely.
Oh. Well, I love being an LA girl. And I'm like super happy about that. But the point is like, it's really interesting to understand the trauma, understand your family's history, understand like the mentalities and the dynamics, and navigating through that without guidance, really, other than like education and reading and really working on yourself. And then being able to kind of create a healing where you're not passing that down to your kids.
Yeah. I worry that I will. Because
but I thought you were perfect.
No, I am, but no, I'm worried because I want my kids to obviously have a better life than me, and they will, like if
that's
everything
natural.
goes
Everyone
right.
wants that,
of course, but I'm saying like I want them to have an easier and better life, but I think there's certain experiences that build character. Not even really like troubling experiences. I just mean like, I'm so close with my grandma, and I have somewhat of an understanding of what previous generations' mentality is and what they went through. And like, I can feel like the history is like passing, like more time is getting in between it, and it's harder to remember. So my kids, I'm like, they're just never really going to have that experience of talking to someone who came from that generation. And then if they're so comfortable, will they be kind of lame? Is my concern of, are you going to be too comfortable and not understand things the way we understand them?
No, I think that's the way that you raise them. I really think it's the environment that you raise them. Like you have the opportunity to curate that. So also genetics plays a huge role. Genes do affect like have an influence on personality
do.
traits. They
Yeah.
really do. When I look at myself, I see my grandparents, my grandpas specifically, both of my my grandfathers, and even both of my parents have always commented, they're like, you act like them. And I rarely got to know them. Like they were part of my life, but starting like from the age 10, they were not there anymore. So from like, and my memory is not there like before 5 or 6. So what is that, like 5 years, let's say?
Formative years.
Yes, in formative years, they exposed me to like everything that I know and love. But the way that I react to things, the way that I act, the way I behave, like both my parents were like, you are basically
Your khasiat.
yeah, they're like, that's from that.
That's so funny. So you're team nature versus nurture.
Nature for sure, I think, has a huge part of it, and I do believe there's like a balance between nature and nurture. So the way that I try to hone it down is nurture. Yeah, like how I have to hold myself back sometimes and like remind myself.
I see what you mean. Yes.
To not like go off the rails.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, of course.
So
genetics
when it
plays
comes
a big
down to
role.
like children,
Yeah.
and I work with kids, I still work with kids. I've been working with kids, for like over 10 years.
Yeah.
You see that, like, you are able to hone in on what you want for your kids. Like, there's parents that cannot discipline their children, and there's parents that can, and everything is subjective. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm ESL. English is my second language. So I think we're in a great spot, Flora. Don't worry about anything, girl. I'm here for you.
You're right. I should not be like my grandma and not worry about
No.
things that haven't happened yet. Which is
know?
that's my bad habit I got from her. You asked me what I learned that was positive. This is my bad habit.
Yeah, it's okay. You could work on yourself. We all have bad habits. Where's Ed Sheeran when you need him? Cue the song. But other than what you have shared today on this podcast, I hope people are still listening. And if you are, congratulations, you made it near the end. We just wanted to, I guess, talk about things that are relatable, but also keep it light. And hopefully this was interesting to you. But also this feels like you just infiltrated into a daily conversation with Flora and I. This is what we talk about all day long.
We really do.
We don't talk about clothes or cars. We talk about trauma.
Yeah, I think the foundation. I think that's how we like really became friends once. Like you realized I wasn't just some, dumb little girl.
Oh my God, quick story. Flora and I met at work. And
not the little eye roll she did.
And she was so sweet and nice. She was, how old were you? 17, 18?
I was 18, yeah.
18. And she would walk in every morning like, good morning, guys. I brought donuts and like coffee. And she would like want to give me a hug like early in the morning.
Hated that. She hated it.
My skin would crawl.
You literally, you've changed so much. Like you can accept love now. Well, I mean, for a while, now.
That was my trauma responding.
You were like, who is this fake person?
I would go home and tell my mom how annoying you are. Yeah. And my mom literally, it's because of my mom.
Day one supporter. Shout out Rosanna. Yeah. Love her.
I would go and be like, oh, she like hugs me and like, it's like 8 a.m. Like who hugs anyone that early? And she's like so happy and she's so fake. And my mom goes, okay, you're listing things that you don't like about her. I said, yeah. She said, find one thing about her that you like, and just think about that all day long. And when you see her, just think about that. Just hone in and focus on that one thing that you like about this person. I said, okay, I'll try, because we're in this office like 5 days a week, like we're stuck together next to each other. And then all of a sudden I like fall in love with you.
Yeah.
And
but I think you like, it must have been, I don't remember when exactly this change happened.
I think it was like a year in.
I think
Or a few months.
honestly, I think you
It took a
called
while.
me and you realized I was like driving Postmates or something on the side, and you had this different perspective of me. Like, oh, this girl's like
I don't remember
working
that.
hard. You don't remember that? That's like my interpretation.
Your narrative.
That's my narrative, because I'm trying to think of what shifted that other than your mom saying it. Like, you had to like see me and relate to me in some way.
It was that, and then I realized what a good person you are and what a sweetheart you are, and that you're actually not fake. And then I was like,
say it again for the haters.
you are not fake. And I realized, wow, she's so cute and adorable and kind and sweet and loving, and you actually like warmed my little cold heart. And then I would go hug her, and she'd be like, get off of me. and then all of a sudden I'm like all about her. She's like, oh, you're so annoying. I was like, Flora, you want to hang out? You want to hang out? She's like, I don't want to hang out with you. I was like, why?
No, I know, it's so funny. I can't believe, it's been a long time.
Beautiful story.
It
I think it's
is.
great. It's one of my favorite friendship stories.
It's one of the best love stories of all time.
It's like Winnie the Pooh and Piglet.
And it's been 11 years, I think, that we've known each other. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot can change. Well, I mean, a lot changed in like the first year.
Yeah,
we weren't miserable for years and years.
Yeah, we worked together for like 4 years together.
Yes.
Yeah. And then we both quit. But that's another story for another time and another podcast, and not on this one. What are your like final words of wisdom?
Final words. Be nice to old people, you guys. I think we're in an era where people are
Don't
like,
say old people, say like the elders.
okay, the elders. Just, I feel like people don't have patience for older generations, and I get it. Trust me, I completely get it. I wanted to pull my hair out when my grandma was raising me when I was an adolescent, but just try to think from their perspective, how they grew up. Sometimes they just think about things differently, and everyone has something to contribute, and everyone can change if they want to.
But also, one day you're going to be an elder.
Yes.
One day you might be going to adult daycare on Glen Oaks.
Yeah.
And one day, God forbid, God, the Lord forbid that you are alone as an elder. And there's like...
I won't. I'll have my AIs. I'll have my robots. We'll have robots by then. I'll never be alone.
I'm going to be in Italy on a yacht. That's what I'm envisioning for myself.
Plan. Yeah. I mean, I think I'm starting to get old.
Stop. This is where it ends.
Here's what I mean.
This is where the podcast ends. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And thank you so much for coming, Flora. Love you.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Bye.